I don't know, man. Like I have spoke on this a lot, and I will say I think riding dirt bikes like really is what's helped me heal a lot of different things. And it might sound crazy, and doctors might look at me like I'm crazy, stupid, whatever. But maybe it just healed my soul, man. And I think a lot of this is mental, like we talked about.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks Podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
What's up, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. But before we dive into today's episode, we have to talk about Desert Fox Golf. What can I say about this company? They have been great. They have these really cool tumblers that hold 17 ounces of your drink of choice with a nice screw-on lid and a slide top for easy sipping. I may have 4 of these tumblers myself. They may have even made the Roughnecks tumblers for the Roughnecks volleyball tournament we held at Newark Station. But along with these tumblers, they also have something called the Phone Caddy. It is the best phone holder in all of golf. I have one of these. Reno does as well now. It holds your phone in a perfect spot on a golf cart. So say goodbye to throwing your phone in the cubby or in your pocket or even in your bag. You have to check out Desert Fox Golf. Head over to desertfoxgolf.com and see for yourself. And when you make your purchase, be sure to use the promo code Roughnecks for 10% off your order. But let's get into today's guest. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. I am sorry for the delay on episodes. That is entirely my fault. We had episode 186 recorded for probably 3 weeks, and I just did not get around to editing it. I have no excuse other than I was being lazy, so I'm sorry for that. But we will. We're back with episodes on track, on time. I promise. They will. I will try to keep them as consistent as possible. I know I fall off sometimes, but life gets in the way sometimes, and it's hard when you have a full-time job and you do this on the side. But I'm just trying. I try to make the most of it, and I try to get the episodes out for you guys. But just a reminder that we do have the Roughnecks College and NFL t-shirts are out now on the website. You can head over to roughneckspodcast.com to support your favorite team and favorite podcast at the same time. If you have a team that is not on the website, just shoot me a message on Instagram or email us at info@roughneckspodcast.com, and we will get your shirt out there for you. And while you're on the website, you might as well subscribe to the newsletter while you are there. So, going into today's episode, I have a special guest that I am super excited to talk to. I'm excited to hear his story, just kind of his side of his mental side of things, essentially. That's what I really want to dive into. But without further ado, Will Posey, welcome to the Roughnecks Podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm super excited to dive into some things, man. It's a rad time. So let's do this thing.
Yeah, so I like to kick off the episodes by allowing the guests to kind of give a background on themselves, just to familiarize. There we go. Words are hard. The guest with who you are. So just kind of tell the Roughnecks listeners who you are.
Well, as you said, Will Posey, right? Reside in Dalton, Georgia, born and raised. Kind of been all over the country, world, doer of a lot of different things. A lot of people know me, obviously, for my motocross background. And also a lot of people know me for the filming, directing, and editing side of things as well. I don't post as much of that on my Instagram as I used to, but yeah, that's kind of what funded my racing for quite some time. I didn't even see it kind of being a full-time job, and that's what it turned up to end up being. And I'll get more into that as we get into the podcast. But yeah, a little bit background on me. Motocross has always been my thing. I started riding when I was 1.5 years old. I actually started riding a little battery-powered four-wheeler when I was a year old at my house and with my dad. And that's actually kind of what got me started into this huge craziness of a thing called life, right? Yeah, and I mean, that's what we did. And a lot of people, think, oh, because you had dirt bikes and all this, life was glamorous and all that. No, my dad raised me as a single father, and that's how I really got into it and was going to school. But I mean, I just raced all the time, really. I mean, and we'll obviously get more into that, but that's really like what like my childhood was riding dirt bikes and just doing that and hanging out with my dad. And I mean, obviously I had my buddies and stuff, but that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I wanted to be. And obviously that's what ended up how I got hurt. And this is obviously not my first time getting hurt, but it was the one that put me in a chair. And even at that, I still want to do it and still have done it and have done some pretty wild things with it, and some accomplishments that I never would have expected ever in my lifetime before, getting paralyzed. So yeah, man, life's a crazy journey is the way I see it. And just the places you can go and the people you can meet. And like you said, the mental side of things, I think it's like a lot of people get lost in the daily world and, and the negative. And I think it's like, okay, how do you turn this negative into a positive? And it takes a lot of clarity with yourself and with your body and connecting your mind and even just the people around you. I mean, it's not easy. And I think that's something that was huge for me. And I think that's what the sport of motocross actually did for me and has got me through a lot of challenging times in my life for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to break down, obviously, through all that. But, the first thing I wanted to go into was the filming, directing, and editing side of things, because you do not post about that. I try to do my research, and obviously that is one of the things that I did miss. But kind of tell us about that. And it's kind of cool that you kind of talked about how you didn't expect it to turn into a full-time job, and that's just kind of what happens. I had a kid that I went to college with, and I don't know if this was his plan the whole time or not, but he didn't pick up a camera or anything and start making videos until he was in college. I think it was his senior year, which would have been my junior year, and he recorded our made videos, like hype videos of our D3 football team for us, and would post them on Instagram. And it ended up leading to him. Now he works for Ohio State football, athletics, but he mainly works with the football team and the NFL. He worked with Myles Garrett, like one-on-one, making videos for him and like all these things. And it's crazy kind of how these things that you love to do and they just kind of turn into a full-time job. But kind of tell us exactly like what the filming, directing, and editing side of things is for you.
Well, so it obviously is still involved heavily in action sports, motocross. That's kind of where the whole thing kind of landed itself when it happened anyways. And with that being said, that's like where it all started. It was, I don't know, I picked up a camera probably when I was 11, 12 years old. I'll never forget my grandfather had this like big dinosaur camera. I don't know if you remember back in the day with the VHS. And like we always had one of those growing up, and I always saw it. Well, it got put away in a closet. One day I was just being a kid and saw it, and I was like, hey, I want to get this out and I want to mess around with it. Well, it didn't work, obviously. Well, I worked that summer. And I was like, I really want to like film, man. I just like there was people that were doing it online. The motocross community as before YouTube really was like a big thing, but people were putting it out, and I was like, that's so cool. And it's kind of when Jackass was like super big and all of that. And so we were always just being kind of goofy and stuff. And so I ended up getting a camera from Walmart, and me and my best friend, we just filmed like our entire summer. And anything we did, I mean, all the way down to like eating food and going out and doing stupid stuff and blowing stuff up and things like that. And so I finally figured out how to get it onto the computer, and then I started learning how to edit. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Well, then it came down to where like I started making like these little clips and finally got them on YouTube, and people started seeing them. I was telling my buddies, well, as you know, somebody knows somebody, and it always kind of links up to something. Well, I got the call. I think I was like 17, man. I wasn't even 18. And they're like, hey, man, like, what do you think about coming down to Atlanta and shooting some like club stuff for us? And I'm like, dude, 17 years old. What? Like I get to go in this nightclub and like they're wanting me to shoot this stuff. And they're like, we'll give you $50. And I was like, done. I'm on my way, dude. I spent more than that in gas driving 2 hours there and 2 hours back. But it was just like the connections for me. And that's where I guess I learned the connection side of the industry. And so after that, it kind of just folded into more, man. I didn't even expect to do it, like I said, as a job. And they're asking me all the time, like, hey, you want to come down? And obviously I realized, hey, I need to make some more money. And they started kind of upping it, and I started doing bigger stuff. And next thing you know, I was doing like these concerts, and I'm backstage with Little John, and I'm like, what is going on here, man? Like me and him are like one-on-one, and like we're filming stuff. And there was just like some times I would like sit back and I'm like, man, this is like wild. Like I never would have expected just doing that. And that was nothing compared to like what I would eventually start to do. And so that's kind of where it started.
Is that I wanted to ask, I was going to ask this later, but is that kind of what helped lead to the connection with Bailey Zimmerman, or was that separate?
Yeah. So yeah, that was actually separate, but there's other connections in the country scene that I actually have from some people around here, and then other stuff that I have done that was more with the video stuff. But like I said, man, I've done a little bit of everything, and the connection with Bailey, we can talk about that a little bit later, but I'll kind of talk on it just now. But I actually was involved as an owner in a tire store, and we built custom vehicles, custom trucks, and we became friends through the truck scene. And next thing you know, we built his dad's truck, and then built his truck. So that's how that kind of came about, which was really cool. And we became friends, and he's a super cool dude, and it was rad.
Yeah, his story is also kind of crazy with how he
Right.
was just building trucks and stuff, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, hey, he can sing as well, and just he fell into the scene and definitely is making a name for himself. But I really like how you talked a lot on all through that with connections, because that is one of the biggest things on this podcast that keeps getting repeated. And I didn't learn it until I was in college, probably my senior year. That's one of the reasons that I started this podcast, was to help build connections, because connections, no matter what industry or what type of life you want, connections will help get you to where you want to be in everything. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, kind of speak on how important that you feel connections are.
Well, that's a great question. So, like as you were saying that, so it's not even what you know, it's who you know, is what we say, right? So connections are huge in the motocross industry. The connections are huge in the film industry, right? And so going back on the film thing, so I was filming the nightclub stuff, right? Doing some smaller stuff here and there. Well, GoPro actually did this like motocross film contest, and I had done it the year before. It was crap. I didn't do very well at all. I hadn't learned enough about film to actually be decent. Well, after I did the first year, I was like, okay, I really need to like practice and do this, right? Well, this was like kind of at a lull in my racing career at this point. Money was kind of tight, and I was trying to find my way, and all of that. So funny thing is, I go and I do this contest again, right? And I make the semifinals, and it doesn't even go past that. But the person that I filmed had no idea of this either. His name was Jeffrey Lewis, a good friend of mine. Him and his dad were actually good friends with the floor manager of Supercross, and his son Wes actually worked at GoPro and was over the motocross department side of things, right? And they were like building that brand. This is before GoPro was really like quote unquote GoPro, as everybody knows, right? It's like 2010, 2011 era when they really started to like ramp up. And so next thing you know, like I had no idea of this. Jeffrey never even mentioned this to me about any of this stuff. I don't know if he just didn't put pieces together or what. So we go and we do this film contest. Like I said, I made the semifinalist. That was it. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in my room at my dad's house, and I get this call from California, and I'm like, it was like 12 o'clock at night, and I was like, I didn't even know who it was, but I was like, well, I'm just going to answer it. Typically I wouldn't, and luckily I did. And he like didn't even tell me his name, but he's like, hey, this is the floor manager of Supercross. My son works for GoPro. We were curious if you would be interested in possibly coming into work at GoPro. So his dad also was starting to do work for GoPro as well. And I was like, man, who's pranking me right now? They know that I've been like hard at work, and I even like went out and got a GoPro just for that video to try to like, maybe make it farther along in the process of the contest. And he was like, no, I'm serious. Like, we're interested in you. We want to hire you. We were talking to Jeffrey and his dad, and they were telling us all about you, your background in motocross, and then how, you're really chasing the film thing, and we really like what we see and all this. And I'm just like, what? Like, this is crazy. And so that like phone call stopped. They were going to send me some hard drives with footage. They wanted to see how I did, and that never happened. And it kind of went quiet for a little bit. And I was like, okay, well, maybe it was kind of just, nothing, and maybe it was just a spark for a second. Well, literally after I'm sitting here thinking that, and I'm like telling the chick I was with at the time, I was like, I just don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I just need to go back to school for like nursing or something, right? And then here goes my phone ringing again the next couple of days. Hey, this is so-and-so from GoPro, a producer. We want to bring you in for the round in Texas for the Outdoor Nationals. Can you hop a flight tomorrow? And I'm like, wait, what? What do you mean tomorrow? Like, you mean you want me to? Yeah, we're going to book the flight now. We'll send you the information, and then we'll see you at the race that day. And I was like, I didn't know if it was a joke or not, dude, because it was like literally so many spaces in between. You're like, what the hell is going on? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going. I was like, send me the information to the flight. I was like, if I get mugged, I get robbed. It is what it is. I was like, I don't even know. Well, when the flight got sent, it was from at GoPro.com email. And I was like, dude, this is legit. And so I fly in. Wes contacts me after that. And then I knew, obviously I had never really spoken to Wes before then. It was just his dad. And I had talked to Jeffrey about it. And he was like, yeah, dude, it's legit. It's legit. And so I show up and we shoot this race. And then they're like, okay, cool. Like, we'll let you know. We'll be in touch with you like in a couple of days. So I flew home. And then next thing you know, by the time I even landed, I already had text messages like, hey, are you available to come next weekend? Like, we want you to shoot again. And then it just like compounded. After the second one, then they brought me into the hotel room after we did the race. And they're like, hey, we want you to edit this round now. Like, you're not going to shoot the next one. You're going to edit it. And then it just flew into it. And it was crazy. So I started flying all over the country then.
That's crazy. Which do you prefer, though, the shooting or the editing?
So I love to shoot. I mean, obviously, and I like climb the ranks through that, So basically it did I started out just as like a B cam, just kind of the helper. And then I just ended up just making my way. And I made some of the most incredible videos, motocross videos that GoPro did. And I actually had the most organically viewed GoPro video for a while. I think it was like in 2015 or 16 that they had ever produced. And then I actually got a top 10 ad award. I was looking at it on my wall from YouTube when I was there. So with that being said, like I was doing productions and had a couple of homies that were on the same team, and we created some series and did some pretty wild stuff. And it was a really, what I call like that. And like, when I say this is no disrespect whatsoever, but it was like a learning curve for me. And like GoPro was like my college, man. And it was really cool because I just got stuck in the trenches and like learned so much, man. Like there was things I had no idea about, and I got to do it there. But back to your question, now with my situation, obviously, like I've had to edit, I edit just full time. I actually still will shoot here and there. It's funny. I'll go out and we'll get in a side by side and I'll still go and shoot, but it's nothing like, what I did before. But I will say, like, the more that I have edited and colored, like, that's my thing. Like, I've really got to hone in on that after I got hurt. And so that's where I land at. Like, I'd much rather would just have a really good DP or a shooter and say, hey, this is like, and that's what I get. Like, also I'll go and direct these bigger projects because, the people that I work with were actually really close, and in a company that I'm involved with as well. And we'll talk about that in a bit, but I'll go and direct. And so I know what's going on and what we're shooting. And then it comes back and it's just like natural at that point.
Have you ever done anything with the Can-Am industry, like anything with Can-Am?
Yeah, we have a little bit. There was a couple of stuff, but not a whole lot. I've kind of dipped into a little bit of everything, man. I mean, when I left GoPro, I did some Coca-Cola commercials, like Zero Sugar, and we did some stuff like the Philadelphia Eagles. But like, I'm gonna be honest with you, man, my bread and butter is motocross. I mean, it's like, obviously I've been on like both ends of the spectrum. I've been an athlete, and then I've also done media, and it's just, I don't know, it's cool when you know the sport and then you know the people. Just the content you can create, man, is just like, it's next level, especially when like it's your homies too, it's just fun.
The only reason I asked that is because one of my girlfriend's friends, boyfriends, long thing, but him and his brother work for Can-Am, and they do that. They do the video shooting and editing and that kind of stuff. That's the only reason I asked. Their names are the Cherubinis. Wasn't sure if you knew who they were or not.
Look, man, I'm terrible with names. I'll be honest with you. I'm like a face person.
But one of the things too, and you're completely opposite of me, because I love getting on here, recording, and doing all this. When it comes to editing time, I'm like I've already done this. Why do I have to do it again?
Yeah, I mean, I get that. And you got to think, man, like when we go through revisions and stuff, and like you're starting to get into like sometimes 6 and 7, it's just like, oh man, like 6 or 7 reviews. You're like, I gotta find that. I gotta and I think it's the more you get into it, you learn not to get married to a piece, is like what we call it. Because a lot of times, like editors will be really into a certain project, and they obviously have their mind of like what the art should be. And there's no right or wrong way in art, but it's what the client wants to end, and you have to realize that. And I think that can be a huge wall that has to be torn down from an editor coming through. And even editors that are way up, you just have to know, hey, like at the end of the day, it's what the client wants, and you just have to learn not to be married to it. And so I think that's like kind of like something that I've learned too. And even just working with like different footage, man, like I love, like, a lot of people can't just get somebody else's footage. They have to edit their own footage. And like, I'm like the total opposite now. Like, I'm like, yeah, I know what my guys that I work with are getting. So dude, I can just reach my hand in and make it happen.
I feel like that makes the biggest difference too, is when you know kind of like roughly what you are getting, because I don't know, like I would have the issue of personally, if I was in your shoes, like if I got some piece that I had to edit, I would feel like I'd struggle because I'd be like, I like this, but will they like this? And it's kind of, is it a combination of adding what you like, adding what they like, and hoping that they merge? And obviously there is revisions that come with it, but like, when you go into it, do you just try to straight go for what the client wants, or do you kind of add your touches on it as well?
Well, I mean, there's obviously different projects where the client has like a certain direction, right? That they want basically the end to be. And I think that's where a client, like, obviously a lot of artists will talk about this, but, artists, I mean, like a film or editor, or you get what I'm saying. But basically, why would the company hire you, right? Like, obviously they're going to give you a vision, and they're going to give you a bullet point of what they want, right? You basically lay it out. But then at that point, they're trusting you to take your eye, your vision, and mesh to what they want on paper, right? They don't have the skills to do that. So that's where you have to take your creative professionalism to go and make their dreams a reality, right? So same thing, like, with, let's just talk like West Coast Customs, right? Homeboy says, hey, I want my car to be like this. I want red seats. Well, okay. Well, he knows he's going to get red seats, but he doesn't know how they're going to be put together, right? So he has to trust the owners of West Coast Customs to stitch the seats and make it look the way he wants it.
Yeah. So, and it's also, it's the customer trusting you and you trusting in yourself. I feel like you said, they hired you for a reason. They want you for a reason. So trust in yourself, trust in your ability. Because that's kind of what I was hinting at, is almost overthinking it. Don't overthink it, and just do what you know how to do and make it happen.
It can be very easy to overthink, like, I don't want to call them smaller projects, but like easier projects, It's almost like when it comes to riders, like it's like, somebody might not, it's harder for a expert writer to write something so simple, right? It's almost hard. And that's the way it is with like editing too. It's hard to bring the mind back down. You know what I'm saying? I've had issues with that. Like, hey, I want this to just be a vlog, and like I want to go in and like make it sick. I just envision, like, I love everything to be as top notch as it can be. And like, the content doesn't always have to be that way. I mean, look at Instagram right now. The algorithm picks up cell phone videos more than it picks up if you go and you spend 3 hours editing this 15-second clip, which is absolutely absurd to me, but it's the truth, and it's the world we're living in right now. So we have to just stay in that,
We had this talk the other night, me and one of my co-hosts for one of our other segments of the episodes. We were talking about it, and it's like, it sucks because you will spend so many hours on a video, and him and his buddy just started up their own like YouTube channel and stuff, and he's like, you'll spend hours editing it, and then you'll get like 12 views, and you're like, what? They're like 3 likes, and you're like, I spent so much. He's like, you just wish people would appreciate it. But that is just the world that we live in now, which is insane. You can make a video, a really dumb video, to be frank, in like 10 seconds, post it and get millions of views. And you can spend 3 hours editing like you said, 3 hours editing a 15-second clip and get like 100 views. It is a crazy algorithm. There's no way to win, I feel like. Yeah, I mean, you can, but you can't. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's an answer to that. And I think this is, and like, it's like I said, this is not the right answer. I'm not going to say that at all, but this is my speculation to it, right? So with Instagram and TikTok and everybody posting their everyday life, right? The cell phone pops out. Somebody's doing something crazy. Cell phone pops out. You're getting it, right? What do you see on TV? You see edited content that, like, okay, hey, it switches between different camera angles. How do we know, like, how that is, right? But when you see a one clip, oh, look what he's doing, and it just flows right through it, then they automatically know that it's real. And everybody nowadays wants to live vicariously through somebody else, whether that be a person, a platform, a YouTube video, the TV. Everybody has their own little niche that gets them going, right? And I think that's the reason why, like, TikTok and Instagram Reels and even YouTube Shorts, like, everybody wants to see something that's like a certain length before they swipe it up. If they see that has like a cut in it, they're like, oh, I don't know, man. That just didn't do it for me. You know, you can either make it too cutty or it can just be too long, or it could be one clip. It just depends on what the footage is and what it is.
Yeah, and we live in such a short attention span world now where everybody likes the quick, scroll. All right, I watched this for 3 seconds. I got what I wanted out of it. Next. Like,
well, think about this too. This is funny as well. You remember how everybody used to post just like the regular widescreen Instagram videos, right? And then they came to where you could flip it up long ways vertical. Well, the whole reason for that is because before, when you were on the 1080 version, the widescreen version, you could see the video below, so people would be more prone to scroll to see what it is because it was already catching their attention. But once you fill the whole screen, you got them. And so, like, that was like their whole method. And dude, it's wild, man. And that's what's crazy is, like, I think when it comes down to like creativity, like, you can't even enjoy like a good like cinematic moment in a movie, or like, live, like, there's a lot of moments in certain movies where it's just like no music and it's literally just like pointing out the back deck, right? And it just sits there for a second, and it's just like it's allowing you to anticipate like what's going to happen or debrief what just happened before. And I feel like that's something the world is slowly like pushing aside. And I don't like that, because I like to be able to like live in the moment.
I like that. Kind of speaking on that, I want to kind of slide into the writing side of things a little bit. The first thing I gotta ask, like, I just want to know, and I hope you're okay with like telling the story, is essentially what happened. Tell the story of what happened to kind of kick all this off.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I can only tell you what I've been told, because when I crashed, it obviously knocked me out, and I was out for quite some time. I was actually riding arena cross track, was going to do some supercross, and 18 was going to do the East Coast rounds, and I ended up crashing in a set of whoops, and it was, it just was a freak accident. Things happen. Went over the bars, and when I did, I landed right on top of my head, and it bent my neck down, and when it did, it like basically was like just a quick motion like that. So burst fracture T3, T4. And that ended up getting my spinal cord, and from that level. So I was chest down when I first like basically got hurt. And what you're asking, so when I actually came to, I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know the president's name. Like, dude, I've been knocked out. I've actually had a bleed on my brain before, but I've never not known certain things like when I came to. And it was a Thursday, and I thought it was Monday. I already thought we raced, and I thought we were just walking around in the field, man. I had no idea. Dude, I was like gone. Well, they didn't know that I had as bad of a head injury as I did. They knew I had a concussion, but then when I went to therapy with my back after my surgery, they actually caught it when they were doing, like, I was having to do like these like peg hold things and stuff, and they're like, hold on a second, like I couldn't figure out. I was like confused almost, and the therapist caught it, and they're like, you're acting like you got like a head injury. And I was like, what? And then like we started doing all these tests, and like if like I shook my head like super fast back and forth, like I was super dizzy, and like it was like a whole new thing into this that I didn't even know about. But basically, yeah, man, got my cord, and an incomplete spinal cord injury. I had a chance to where I could have walked again, but the problem is when the surgery happened, I had a series of fluid that happens sometimes with spinal cord injuries. And, we have fluid around our cord. Where actually now with the injury, the way it happened, I actually have it vertically in my cord. So it disperses out and basically, gets into the nerve endings and causes issues. So it obviously worsened my injury with that happening. But it's kind of one of those things, man. I've actually come a long ways from where I started. I'll never forget when I left out of therapy, my therapist told me, she's like, "You're a hero now." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "You got superhero powers." And I was like, no. I was like, "I'm leaving out of here in a wheelchair. Like, there's no way." She's like, "You'll understand." She's like, "You'll learn one day." And obviously there's been multiple things that I have done and visited with people and really understood like what she meant. And there's one thing that definitely sticks out. And once we get more into it, we can talk about it. But yeah, it was a time, man. And like, I actually was talking about somebody today when we were at the track. I was at the track today. And they were just like, "Hey, man, like, how did you just push through? Like, I see your videos on Instagram and you're just like, you're just out there like you just don't care." And I was like, it was either A, I give up and I just sit at home and don't do anything, or B, I go out and I have fun and say, well, what's the worst that could happen, right? And it's hard to even put it that way because obviously it's so dangerous. But my dad, like, instilled that in me because I'll never forget, like, when I was, racing when I was younger and things like that, parents would ask, "Why do you let your kid race? Like, it's so dangerous." And even after I started riding, after I got hurt, people are like, "What, you're crazy. Like, he could die." And he's like, "Well, yeah, he could literally walk or roll at that point out the front door and pass away." And like, he lived by that motto. And what's crazy is 2 years after I got hurt, my dad passed away from a massive heart attack. And he took 2 steps out the front door and had a heart attack and fell face first. And like, that right there, that's like who he was and how he was. And I think that just like stamped everything he always told everybody. It's like, you never know like when your last chance is. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I just feel like we get like built inside this bubble. And I think if it wasn't for him, being like, so pushing and allowing, he was very hard on me when I was younger. But then obviously as I grew up, he kind of realized he was being too hard, and like, we meshed and he just like allowed me to do what I wanted to do. And like I said, man, we lived it, dude. And I can definitely say, like, man, my dad was like one of the best people that I have ever known, met, loved. He raised me as a single father. He had one heck of an accident, worse than what I went through, and when I was 4 years old. And to see him survive, they actually got shot in the face with a 9mm, and they told him he would be a living vegetable for the rest of his life. Never walk, talk, eat, sleep, none of that. They told my grandparents that they needed to pull the plug, and they were like, "No, he'll make it." And he pulled out of it, man, and raised me as a single father. And so to have that by my side after I got hurt and him there every day, I was like, I got this, And I think that's just what we talked about before, like the younger days. Like, it's all about what's instilled in you and where you put your mindset and where you're going to go.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask too, how long ago was your accident?
2018. So January 25th of 2018. So we're 5.5 years in right now.
What was the mental side of things? Obviously, like, you didn't know exactly what was going on when you first woke up and everything, but like, once you kind of, got past that, I don't know what to call it, not understanding part, like, what was the mental side of things like? Like, where were you mentally? Because this is, I feel like, a very important part, because a lot of people are going to be negative, but what was your mental side of things like after you kind of came to?
Oh, man. Well, it's crazy. This is funny, too, because this all just kind of ties itself in. I was laying in the hospital bed after I got out of surgery. And I'll never forget, man, I was on a dilaudid drip, and they had to take me off of it. And I was going through withdrawals, and it's the worst pain I've ever been through in my life. Like, I yelled, cussed, screamed the entire 24 hours of a day. I mean, I pissed a lot of people off the hospital. I will tell you that. I had doctors and nurses coming in. They were getting ill with me, but dude, I was hurting, and Winter X Games was coming on when I was in the hospital, literally the day after I finally got myself cooled off. And they had a paraplegic class, and I was like, whoa. I was like, this is cool. So like, I literally just got hurt and was like saying I was never going to ride my dirt bike again, and then literally just got out of surgery, and I'm seeing this on TV, and I looked at my dad and I was like, I'm going to do that. And he's like, no, the hell you're not. He's like, you are completely done. He's like, the bikes, you can keep your race bike, put it up for memories, but he's like, we're done. You're done. I had like five bikes, I think, at that point in time. And he was like, I'm selling everything. He's like, I'm done. And I was like, all right. And like, so I kind of just chilled about it. Right. And I had a little KLX 110, a little pit bike that you just ride around the track and just goof off on. And this is like fast forwarding out past after I got out of therapy and stuff. And I had like a super bad doctor's visit. I was just like so pushing that I was, they had made a mistake and that I was going to do what I needed to do. And, one day I was just going to start walking or something, I don't know, man. I just was like, I was just like, it was a different, like, I was like almost mad, right? I don't know how to explain. I wasn't mad, but I was like, I'm hungry. I want to go and I want to continue on, right? Well, they tell me some stuff basically that, I'll probably never walk again, which they've already told me already before after surgery and even before surgery. But I'm the type of person like, hey, I'm going to ask and then you're going to tell me again until finally I fully understand it. And because I guess I still haven't grasped it. I did, but I didn't. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I need to go ride my motorcycle. And I was like, because I'm in like a dark spot and I was like, I just don't like what I'm hearing. And I was like, why can't you take me down to Alabama? I've got some friends who own a track down there. I was like, there's a flat field. I was like, put me on the 110. And I was like, if I fall over, it's not going to hurt me. And I was like, I'm going to ride. And he's like, I just don't know, man. He's like, I don't know if that's a good idea. I was like, look, I'm not even going to get on the track. I was like, I literally am going to be in the grass field. And he's like, okay, we'll go. And I was like, fair enough. Strap me on, bungee cord in my feet, whatever it was we did. Get me out there. Well, within an hour, guess where I'm at on the motorcycle on the night track. I mean, it's not anything crazy, but there I am. And I start riding. Well, we posted that video and it went viral, dude. Like everybody from my hometown, I'd been following my story and stuff. And like, it just like went out. Well, I ended up getting a call from a guy and he was like, hey, I'm with X Games. You think you can ride a 450? And I'm like, dude, I have only rode this little bitty 110. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got it all day, dude. I was like, no problems. I am down. I got it. He's like, cool. He's like, well, here's the qualifier. Here's the information. You're invited. You come here and you show us you can ride it. You can go to Aspen, Colorado and race X Games. And was just like, gave me the dates and was like, we're pumped to see you. And I was like, holy shit, how did I get myself into this?
Wow. But that goes to show that social media can be a very useful tool to gain connections as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I essentially found you and we got connected was through social media. Like that is how things will happen. And I'm not saying like we need to post our entire lives out there. Like some people really should not post everything that they're doing. But
yeah, right.
I don't need to see what you're eating for lunch every day. It doesn't. I don't care. But so you ended up going down. How did that go? To getting the call to ended up going and showing that you could ride a 450.
So that's even funnier about the story, man, because like we don't get snow down here in Georgia, man. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no snow, and here I am. This southern boy from Dalton, Georgia. Like Dalton, Georgia's not that. I mean, it's an okay sized town, right? I mean, it's not like 2 red lights or nothing, but it's smaller. And I'm like, yeah. It's like I remember I rolled in and I was like, hey, I was like, you remember that stuff we were watching in the hospital? And I told you I was gonna do. He's like, yeah. He's like, what's up? And I was like, well, I just got a call from X Games and they just invited me. He's like, no, you're full of shit. He's like, don't mess with me like that. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. And I like showed him the call and then I showed him the email that they sent with the dates. And I was like, we're going. He's like, you don't even have a bike. And I was like, well, they asked me if I could ride a 450 and I just told them yes. I was like, well, I guess we're about to figure it out right now. So I actually had some help with KTM. It wasn't like a factory ride or nothing like that, but they were helping me with parts and bikes and stuff like that. Before I got hurt, I actually won a national title in 2015 and had gained some pretty good help with them. So I just called up to the shop up there at the house, and I was like, hey, I was like, I want to get a bike. I was like, this is what it is. And like, what are you doing, man? We haven't heard from you, and like we've been worried about you and all this because I hadn't even gone to the shops or nothing. Like I just like completely removed myself from it all because I thought that I was done. I was like, well, I just have to pull completely out. But deep down inside my head, I was not done. I was finding a way to do something, And I was like, I need a bike. I was like, you guys get me hooked up. They're like, yeah. So they called up and got me a bike, dude. And then I literally had to go to California for Red Bull Straight Rhythm. And as soon as I got back, we started building the cage. Took 2 days. My buddy owns a fab shop. We fabbed a bike cage around the bike, and I went and rode. And like we showed up back down to where I rode the pit bike in the field. Showed up down there. I rode on Saturday. They were having a race Sunday, and about halfway through, I had jumped almost everything on the track besides this one jump. And I told my dad, I said, "Hey, I'm racing tomorrow. I hope you're ready." And he's like, "There's no way you are." And I ended up winning both my motos the next day. And I raced College Boy.
Did that help kind of even more with the mental side of things, like being able to win both motos?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was super sick, but I think what it was more than anything is like I went out there and I proved myself that I could do it. And like once I figured out that I could do it, I was like, okay, I can actually ride moto again, and like I can actually like do decent. Like I didn't think I was going to be able to do it, because when I first like went out there, it was like a whole new curve for me. Like it's totally different, man. But like as time went on, I figured out a better bike setup and so forth. But yes, when I did that and I realized I could still ride again and still go and like train like I was, and like, because that's like all like I'm very goal oriented and driven because of my childhood, right? And that's all I really know and did know at that point. And like I needed that to help me overcome. And so then at that point, it was like we were riding like 2 to 3 times during the week, and then also riding on the weekend. So that was what was crazy. Like it was like, hey, you have this injury, and then all of a sudden I'm like right back in the same place I was, but in a different area. You know what I'm saying? Like I was hurt, but I was still like training as if I was before. My body was different. And I think also like a lot of people are like, you got on the bike after 8 months after injury. Like that's crazy. That's unheard of. But like a lot of actual like activity is actually good when you're in a situation like this. Like, yes, I had to be very careful with sores and things like that. But that's what happens to a lot of people is they get depressed, like what we're talking about, and they shut down and they don't want to do anything. They don't want to be active. Well, then when you're not active, that's when the body just completely starts to deteriorate at that point, right? And so here I am 8 months into it, and I'm just pushing myself as hard as I can go. Well, I ended up getting some help from Concept 2. They sent me a rower, and I was able to use my wheelchair so you can take the platform off. So I was doing cardio like literally 8 months into my injury. And like, like I said, I was chest down when I first started, and using the motion and stuff like really helped me start to like gain some abs and like get them back going. And then things started firing. And I don't know, man, like I have spoke on this a lot, and I will say, I think riding dirt bikes like really is what's helped me heal a lot of different things. And it might sound crazy, and doctors might look at me like I'm crazy, stupid, whatever. But I maybe it just healed my soul, man. And I think a lot of this is mental, like we talked about.
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I was actually just listening to, Jordan Peterson's podcast today with Oliver Anthony, which, he's a very big guy now, but he was talking about, Oliver Anthony was speaking like his goal is to create some type of nonprofit to be able to help people with PTSD, that people that just got out of rehab. And he is essentially, it would be like farming. And he's like, there's this place in Italy that's what they do with like people that are depressed, that have suicidal thoughts and all this stuff. They take them out to this wine vineyard, and they essentially put them to work, which sounds bad, but it's because hard work and outdoors, like doing something that you honestly enjoy, will help with anxiety, with depression, with all of those things. I work outside. There's a lot of days I don't want to be outside because it's so hot. But when I come home, I'm usually in a pretty good mood, because it's like I've been outside in the sun all day. I've put in a hard day's work. What is there to be upset about?
And I think that's exactly what I'm saying here, man. It's just like, that there's nothing like the sunshine and the fresh air. I'll be honest with you. And that's the reason why it's so good for the body in general. But yeah, it just like it compounded, man. And then next thing you know, we go up there, and I have never been any type of snow or any. I'd been in snow like once or twice before that, like big snow like that, right? And so when we got there, I was like, this, I got this. This is not. I wasn't saying it wasn't going to be hard, but I was like, oh, I've been riding, I feel good, dude. I got on this snow bike, man, and I thought like. It was like I was learning how to ride all over again. And I'll never forget, I came off the track and I was like, there just ain't no way, man. I was like, do not even know how to do this, how this goes down. I was like, and he was like, my dad was like, well, you should just try it one more time. And he's like, just calm down. He's like, let's go see if we can't find somebody, maybe, figure out how the settings work on this. Cause it's totally opposite of a dirt bike. The snow bike is, the way it's set up. Well, I ended up meeting a good friend of mine now. His name was Tyler Vacala, and he knew like how to set one up or whatever. And I was kind of going over like, I was like, dude, I just can't even turn the thing. And I was like, it's just hard. And he's like, well, the faster you go, the easier it is to ride it. And so I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And then so we got the bike, started getting it set up. Well, next thing you know, a couple more practice after that, I'm like pumped, man. I started jumping everything. And like there was a double that Tyler, he's an able body, rode the pro class. And I jumped this double, and he was like, bro, I'm not even hitting that. And he goes, because there's ice on the face. He goes, why are you doing that? I was like, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was ice on the face. I don't know anything about this. And he goes, dude, well, that's probably the best thing for you because you literally don't know anything about this sport, but obviously know how to ride a dirt bike, and it's very similar to it. And he's like, so you're just sending it. And he's like, that's what's going to be like your ticket. And that's kind of like what happened. I ended up winning everything up there that weekend, all the motos, everything. And I rode it, probably 8 to 10 times, and then went to X Games, and I actually got second. I wish I could have won the first year, but it was a good learning curve for me. The guy actually who won, he is a factory Yamaha rider, motocross Hall of Fame. Like he's huge, and he's been in my situation for 10 plus years. His name is Doug Henry, and he's obviously rode them many a time. So he had his setup dialed, but nobody's ever given him any type of like competition. Well, I came in out of nowhere. Nobody knew who I was. This kid from Georgia, where it's typically 100 degrees, has now come out here and showed some speed. Well, after that, dude, I was like, man, I got second, but I was still upset, dude. I wanted to win. I wanted X Games gold. Well, I went and I trained the next year, and I was there. And I actually had some kidney issues going into X Games of 2020. And didn't even know if I was going to get to race it, man. I was tripping, and I had to have surgery. Well, had surgery. They wanted to keep me there for 2 days. I told them as soon as I was done with surgery, I was like, I'm out. Got my dad to get me out of the hospital, put me in my wheelchair, packed me in the truck, and we went to Colorado for X Games. And I ended up throwing it down in practice and had the fastest lap time, and then ended up coming to the race, pulled the whole shot, was winning, and I crashed. I just got excited, I got excited. I think I ended up like fourth or something like that, and I haven't had it anymore. But dude, it was so crazy. Like, I think just everything together, I know I've said a lot here, but just from where it was to where it went in 2 years was just absolutely insane.
That's what's also, I wanted to ask, and I don't mean any disrespect by this, but what happens when you do crash? Like how, because obviously, and I don't, like I said, no disrespect, you can't just get up and like pick your bike up. Like how does that work for you? Like when you do crash?
Typically, I'll just have like a candy bar stashed inside of my pants, and I'll just take a break. I'm just kidding. No, you just lay there, man. You just kind of just rest. I mean, until somebody can get you, I mean, typically it's tough to say, like, I crashed at X Games, but people are around the track, so they'll pick you up. I mean, I've been at races where, they don't have a lot of adaptive classes, so I'll just ride with the regular guys. Well, they'll just stop and pick me up or help me up or whatever. And there's actually a really cool story. We were in Alabama racing, and Ryan Hallbrooks is a friend of mine, and we were battling it out, and I was going to go around and pass him. Well, we took the same line, and he stalled it and fell over. Well, I hit him, and so I fell over. Well, instead of him picking up and just leaving me there to this race to win, he comes over and picks me up, and he's like, all right, go on, buddy. And so, like, I just barely take off, let him get picked back up, because we had left everybody. And I let him pass me back, and then we started back where we were again. And then I passed him back in that same section I was setting him up pass for. But it was so cool because, like, one, he had the respect to stop and pick me up after he could have just, like I said, he could have picked his bike up and left me there and been like, I'm going to win. But two, he had respect for me because when he picked me up, I could have just took off and been like, thanks, and then left. But no, I allowed him to go back in front, and we got to continue our battle. So that was what was super cool about it. So I don't know, man, motocross is like a big family too. So a lot of people, are connected in that way. And there's been a lot of support through it. And there's been some that, don't like it and, don't want people to race that have a cage and they think it's an advantage or too dangerous or whatever. But I mean, everything has its ups and downs.
Yeah, it is you can tell it's a big family. I mean, I watch Supercross and motocross all the
Okay.
time. And like, I mean, you'll have your battles, definitely. You have some people that didn't care for each other. Chad Reed, James Stewart did not like
Yep.
each other. You have your people that you have that, but there is also a big community. You will see people where they'll want to, you could be like, why didn't they make that pass? Like, and you're like, because they're friends, they're teammates. Like, they're not going to be dirty in the heat race. Now, if it comes to the main event, it might get a little
Yeah.
not dirty, but touchy feeling. You know, I might bump you a little bit, but it is. You can tell there is a giant family, and like, you know, maybe somebody wins a race or gets on the podium that hasn't won in a long time, and you see all these riders congratulating them and telling them good job after they cross the finish line and all this stuff. And it is a big community, and did that help you also? You know, dealing with the injury and everything. Did that help you kind of stay on track?
It definitely did, man. And I think too, like when things started getting posted, like I will say, like social media really took off for me, and like it made a lot of things happen. And I think that's another thing that kind of like helped me push through the injury was people like reaching out. Man, I had people that were, you know, I'll just, you know, say from drug dealers down to depression. I mean, you had scales of everything, people in the injury, and always just like reaching out, and we're like, man, you know, I was having a rough day today and you just really helped me get through it. Or, hey, like, how do you do it and all this? And so it kind of like kept my mind busy too, you know? And I think that was like one of the other things that like helped me not land into a negative on the injury. And I realized, hey, like, what the nurse told me, hey, you know, you got superhero powers now. And I realized that when I could actually talk to somebody, and like, man, I've talked people off ledges before that were just like, I'm over it, I just want to be done. And it's just like, it's wild to me because I never would have been able to do that before. But now I feel like I have something that can be relatable to somebody, which is crazy for me to say, you know, just because of what I have or what's going on. But I mean, man, you know what, like, I'm happy where I am. If I can help somebody through a situation, I think that's like most important, you know. I mean, because there's no changing what's going on with me right now. I mean, hopefully one day, right? I mean, that's what we all hope for. But why not use my negative to help somebody else's negative and maybe change their outlook on life, or you know, maybe what, you know, they're thinking in the moment. You know what I'm saying? There's just a lot that can kind of go into something like this, and I think a lot of people get lost and don't realize, hey, you know, I think a lot of people land on the negative on something like this, and which is very easy. But at the same time, I think if they could see more of the positive of it, like how it can really make something of it. Like there's a couple of guys I follow on Instagram, a guy with a quad, and he's living happy as ever, man. You know, he can even use the use of his hands. If I was in his situation, I can do it, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? So he's like a what am I trying to say here? Basically, he's somebody that motivates me. You know, I see that, I'm like, holy cow, man! Like, if that dude can do it, then, you know, we can all keep going. And I mean, he's just happy to be alive, and I think that's like what a lot of people need to see, even through the hard times, man. Like, there's times, man, when my dad passed away, trust me, like I went through some spots and I relived my injury all over again. But I'm glad that I pushed myself through it and got where I'm at now.
I was gonna ask, kind of, you know, going off of all of that you just said, what is it that drives you? Like, what would you say is your driving factor?
That's a tough question. I don't know, man. I think it's like multiple things, and I think too, like, it's like, you know, it was always instilled to me to never give up, right? Like, you never give up. You never give up. You got to finish the race. Doesn't matter what place you get. Like, you know, if you crash or whatever, you just don't stop. And I think like what that boils down to is like the lights at the end of the tunnel. You can see it. Why would you stop now? Like, what's going to be the next thing, you know? And I think that's something that I've kind of always looked at, even when like I was in like my dark negative spots. It's like, what's next? And like, if you stop, you ain't gonna get to what's next. You know what I'm saying? And there's gonna be negatives, there's gonna be positives, and you can pull yourself out of a negative into a positive, right? I mean, there's just multiple things you can do in life. And like, I don't know, man. I just think like you just don't know what's at the end. And I think the end is obviously when it's our time in the book, right? When the good Lord says it's time for us to go, I think that's the end. And I think that's where a lot of people get lost, and want to do something else. And I just don't think that's, you don't know. I mean, you might be feeling that low at that moment, but what about in 2 years? I mean, you see people that are literally rock bottom in 2 years. They're living their dreams, multimillionaire, traveling the world, or the next champion. Like, you just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about, there's going to be negatives, there's going to be positives. That's essentially life. Everybody has a different path in life, and there's ups and downs. Some people have bigger ups than others, but if you take whatever your positive is and you enjoy that to your ability, like if I found $1 on the street, and I turn this into a positive, it could be the same as somebody making a multi-million-dollar deal. Like it all depends on your mindset. If you just tell yourself like, hey, you know what? This may not be the best thing in the world, but for me right now at this moment, it is. Like, you have to take, and I lost $1. All right. Guess what? You learned something. You learn something. Every negative, every, downfall, every, mistake or failure, if you want to even call it that, you learn something through all of those. So take those failures, take those downfalls, and turn them into a positive the next time that it happens, because it more than likely will happen again.
Well, see, and I think that's like what, I feel like I wish we had more of. Like, I wish people would just see that, it's not, there's like a meme that's going around on Facebook and like Instagram and stuff. I'm sure you've seen it, but it's like, guy with a bicycle wishes he had a car. Guy with a car wishes he had a Lamborghini. Guy with a Lamborghini wishes he had a plane. And like, everybody has their own riches. And when I say their own riches, I'm not just meaning money. Like, there's people that have the most money in the world, but they might not have the rich of love, right? There might be somebody who has a rich of love, but doesn't have the money. And I think everybody is just different for a reason, right? We're all made different. But I think that's just where, like, people need to kind of realize, and it's hard. I mean, we all deal with it. Heck, I do, right? I mean, there's things I want, but I think if you look at it in a different direction and say, hey, I'm going to push myself to see if I can make it there, then I think it's different than being like the jealous part of it, right? Like, you can put your mind and say, hey, I'm going to work and build myself at that point, versus, being like, oh, I wish I had that, well, you can do anything you put your mind to, right? Well, that's what we've been talking about, is that mental clarity and that mental strength and all that. So for some, it's easier than others. Some of us, we can't even get a hold of it. I mean, shoot, man, I'm no Elon Musk, right? But I would like to obviously have some of that. But, I think if I wanted to pursue that, then you could. It might take others longer than him.
That's one of the things that drives me nuts, is the whole people are like, oh man, I wish I could do this, or I wish I could do that. And you like, sometimes I've asked people before, I'm like, all right, what are you doing to get there? And they're like, whoa. And you're like, hey, don't tell me you want it if you're not going to actually put in the work. Like, you can't just hope for something to fall out of the sky and you get what you want. That's not how life works. I wish it was sometimes, but that's just not. You have to put in the work. And actually, it makes that thing that you want way more enjoyable when you put that work in. You just have to put in the work. It's not always going to be sunshine and rainbows and things are just going to fall out of the sky. There's a lot of down points that you have to, of grinding it out in order to get to where you want. Like, I spend a lot of time on this podcast and do not make the money off of it that I would hope to. But that time that I'm putting in is to hopefully help get to that point to where, maybe this isn't exactly my goal, but maybe I can quit my full-time job and I can do this full-time. If it's something I want to do, I have to put in the work. Maybe you lose a little sleep. Maybe you forget to eat a meal. Don't always recommend it, but it is something you might have to be willing to sacrifice. Like, you have to be willing to sacrifice in order to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, and I mean, just think about what we were just talking about there. That goes all the way back to what we were just discussing about, even all the way down to social media. Think about that. Like, that's the thing. Everybody is in the now. Like, let some things just take some time. I mean, dude, I didn't just learn how to ride again all over. Like, it took time. It took time, to do that. And it took time for the healing process and so forth, I mean, there's just multiple things, and that's what's crazy about it. But I think it's just crazy how the world just thinks it has to move so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't need to be that way. I think that people need to enjoy time a little bit more because time flies, man. I'll never forget being homeschooled, and I'm like, I can't wait till I'm graduated, and then I look and I'm like, man, I'd love to be 18 again.
Oh, I agree. I'm only 24 and
Yeah.
I'm 25 now, but like you look back and you're like, man, I really wish I could go back to high school. I wanted out of high school so bad, but sometimes I wish I could go back to being that 18-year-old kid with no responsibilities and no cares in the world.
Imagine if you knew what you know now when you were like 6 or 7 years old. You know what I'm saying? That's where I look at and I'm like, holy cow, man. But it's all about learning and it's all about the decisions you make, which is crazy.
You literally have to continue to learn every day. If you're not trying to learn every day, like you're doing yourself a disservice. You're doing your family, your future family, whoever it is, you're doing them a disservice because like there is, especially in the world we lived in, like we talked about, this is a world of endless knowledge that you can access anytime you want. The internet, you can go type in Google how to, and there is about a million different things that might pop up depending on, what you've searched recently. But like you can figure out how to do anything you want to, and you can't even make an excuse for it. Like, and guess what? When you start to learn something new, you more than likely are not going to be good at it. Look at how you talked about when you went out in the snow. You were like, this isn't it. And then you just have to keep going, and then you might be able to figure it out. It's not going to be perfect the first time. You didn't win the X Games the first time you went, but you still got second, but that allows room for improvement. Even if you win, there's still room for improvement because guess what? Everybody else is just going to be trying to get better too.
You're only as good as your last race, as they say, man. And that's the truth. Everybody's out there. They want to come for you, man. And that's what's wild. You got to stay on your game. But I mean, that's the thing is like, I haven't really rode that much, just with business and all of that. And like, I think if X Games comes back, I'm definitely down. I definitely want to do it again. I got the taste of blood, let's say that, and with, my dad passing and stuff, like I definitely would like to be able to dedicate that to him, coming over the finish line on live TV. I think that'd be so cool just after everything and all of that. And that would definitely sign the dotted line for me.
What's up, everybody? I wanted to interrupt today's guest episode for a quick second and tell you guys about Roughnecks merch. If you head over to roughneckspodcast.com, grab yourself some Roughnecks gear. We have many different types of options. There are t-shirts, long sleeves, sweatshirts, hats, coffee cups, tumblers, and much more. My personal favorite is the Take No Bull shirt or the classic black Roughnecks t-shirt. That was the first merch ever sold, so if you were looking for an original, that is the way to go. Buying merch and wearing it out is one of the best ways to support the podcast, so head over to roughneckspodcast.com and grab yourself some Roughnecks merch. Let's get back to today's guest. That was the last question I was about to ask you was, what are your goals going forward? Is obviously that's in it, but is there anything else?
Well, so I had a project planned at the end of 2020 going into 21, and I kind of already did it, but I want to do it with Guinness. So I set the paraplegic distance record jump, but I want to set it with Guinness and do a bigger jump with them actually there because, like, they have to be there to be able to get it in Guinness and so forth. But I actually was working on it with a friend, and he passed away doing a jump, which unfortunately, it sucks. But, he was doing what he loved, man. And so that's the thing is like, I've kind of been in limbo. I kind of put it to the side when all that kind of went down. But at the same time, I still would like to be able to do it so I could still, say get it in Guinness. But then I would like to obviously dedicate that to him because we were working on a project together. He obviously was not paralyzed. He was an able-bodied guy. He holds the record for ramp to dirt. 425 feet on a dirt bike, dude. It's absolutely insane. So he was going for 500. His name was Alex Harville. Super good dude. He was from out west, up north, up there. Race moto, supercross, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, we're gonna do a project together. So I don't know. That's kind of a goal that's obviously been floated around. Maybe some just like other just fun riding stuff. Like I definitely will do X Games again if they bring it back. But dude, like I didn't realize like I guess the reach of like the riding videos and like talking about the bike. Like I just did a video the other day, and I think maybe that's what you saw, the Instagram reel, when I was like talking about getting on the bike and stuff. I got 5.3 million views in 2 weeks, and I was just like, what in the world is going on? And like it blew up on TikTok, man. Like my TikTok's blown up just because of all the riding stuff and all that. And like, I don't know, man. I don't ever want to let that really die, I guess. So I'll probably still do some riding stuff. And I'm connected in. You say you watch Moto, so do you know what Verb Moto is? Do you follow any of that?
I do not.
You have to check it out. So they're a big publication, video stuff. We also have the Verb Company where we create, like I said, Red Bull Moto Spa and do like the projects. I'm sure you've seen Red Bull Imagination with like Tyler Berryman and all those. So we actually do all the production work for that as well. So we do a lot of different cool things like that. But yeah, man, I think just doing some stuff with Verb and like, there's events. We're actually doing a race in South Carolina next weekend. And so being able to go out there and ride with those and seeing all the kids, because you were asking me, how like influences and like, man, like it was just crazy. Like when I started riding like that in the cage, like all these kids were just coming to the van and just wanted to say what up and like high five and like talk about the bike. And like, there's so many parents that were coming like, oh, my son, he looks up to you and he just thinks you're so cool. And like, it's so cool that you're out here riding. And I was just like, holy cow, I did not realize me enjoying it actually touched all that were around,
Yeah, that is. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you never know who's watching. That is one of the things that I learned early in my football career was you never know who's watching you. And that was more so like, especially in college, our college coaches would tell us like, listen, go out, have fun, enjoy yourselves. But understand we are a small D3 school that is full of athletes. And if you, like, we are the biggest group on campus. If you're out there, you guys are out there being dumb, you might get in trouble. But also the same is true. If you're out there doing good things, you may never actually get the praise for it or whatever, but it may lead that person that saw that to do a good thing for somebody else or do something. Like, you never know who's watching, so always try to be the best version of yourself, even if you think no one's watching.
Exactly. I always say that, man. And like, that's what's tough too. And, getting out and having a good time with your buddies and stuff. So you always got to kind of like resemble yourself. And I mean, hey, man, there's times where we still get loose, right? Everybody does, but it's just still how you carry yourself for sure.
I do have one final question before we go into the final segments of the podcast though. And I just want to know, who is your favorite professional rider?
Man, that's tough, dude, because I got a bunch. I mean, you got to think, man, I got a lot of buddies too. And like, I don't know. It's tough to say, man. I don't even know if I have a favorite. I will say there's one that stands out, and I still talk about it to this day. So James Stewart, you actually mentioned him earlier. James actually used to come up here to Lazy River and race here when he was younger for Loretta's. And obviously I saw him there. He obviously was much older than me. But then when I started working at GoPro, I actually started working with James, and we actually created a pretty cool relationship and became friends. And he invited me to ride down there. He hooked me up with his 7 gear at that point when I was still racing. And like, we just had this vibe, man. A lot of people don't get that opportunity. And I mean, same thing with like Villapoto and all those dudes. Like I worked around them, but I created such a rad relationship. And that was what was cool, is because I also rode. So I understood their dynamic, but then I also was on this side and we could create that content. And so that's what's been like super cool. And then even after I've gotten hurt and I've gone and done these different things or been in these events and stuff, like dudes that I'm like, oh, you did look, there's so-and-so. And they're like, yo, bro, there's Will. That's Will Posey, the dude who rides that's in a wheelchair that's jumping this huge dune jump. And I'm like, wait, this dude knows who I am? I was like, I'm nobody, compared to this guy. And so that gets cool to like kind of be that way. And like, we were at Imagination the first year they had it, and like a lot of those guys I know, and they're like, why didn't you bring your bike out, dude? You could have jumped the road gap. And Tyler was like, he's like, bro, you got to bring your bike next year. He's like, I'm pulling you over the road gap. Obviously I never took my bike because I was obviously editing, but there's been a couple of them that are like, dude, you got to come out and ride, man. This would be so sick to see you jump this stuff sitting down. And I'm just like, boys, that's a little big to be sitting down.
So, there does come a point where I do have to say no.
Yeah, because I've jumped some big stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing, but it's kind of one of them things, man. You get on the bike and everything just goes away, dude. I'm just like, It's like I'd never even, had an injury at that point. It's weird, man. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm going to move into our final segments of the podcast, and I do have a question that I like to ask every one of my guests, and I am curious about this one because you kind of hinted at it a little bit, but if you could go back in time and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Holy cow. If I could tell myself 16 years old, what was I doing at 16? I'm just trying to think back to that time. It's so crazy. Like, I mean, obviously you know what? When I was 16, I actually had a pretty bad injury. I broke both my wrists, and then I got my navicular bone in my right hand. So I was hurt the majority. I was walking around with 2 casts on my arms. But that was back when my best friend Matt was he was still around. He actually passed away in 2011. He was still racing and was doing Loretta's, and I'll never forget we were traveling. So honestly, man, like, I don't know. Like, I think maybe just soak up more of the good times, right, dude? Because I missed the hell out of him, man. That was my homie, and we had a lot of good times together. And my dad and his dad were best friends, and obviously his dad's still around, so me and him were very well connected, and he's like a second dad to me. But yeah, man, I think I'd just be maybe just more thankful for the things that I was doing and the times, and even the times with my own dad, right? We traveled so much, and you just get down on yourself. And I even think back to, like, even in 2019, man, when I did my first X Games, like, he was like crying that I got second. He was like so proud of me, and I was so pissed. And I kind of wish I just had soaked more of that up and like lived in that moment. Like, we've talked about this throughout this whole podcast, but I wish I had just chilled out and not been upset about it and been thinking about the next year when we're literally a year out. I wasn't soaking up. Man, like, I just overcame this with him, and like we just did this together. I was like upset. So that and just more memories with him too, because I'll never forget, like, when I went out and practiced in 20 and qualified and had the lap time. My dad was like, "Yo, dude," he's like, Doug Henry. Like, obviously my dad was older than Henry, but he was like, that's my hero. And he's like, you're right there with him, and like you guys are battling it out or whatever. And he's like, "You're my hero, dude." He's like, "This is insane." He's like, "I just don't even have the words for you right now." He's like, "I didn't even think you were gonna race." And he's like, "You just came out of the hospital, didn't even ride, and are out here doing this." He's like, "What? Like, where?" He even asked me, he's like, "How do you, like, where do you get your mental game from?" So dude, it's wild, man. I think just like live in the moment, man. That's everybody. I'm bad about it, dude. I'm always on my phone because I have so much going on in that. But like, I've tried to like put it down more and just be there, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of advice that a lot of people, including myself, can take. And it is so easy, especially in the content world, to get caught up in your phone. That's where, I mean, I do it all the time where I'm on Instagram and I'm messaging somebody or I'm posting a reel or whatever. And then all of a sudden, an hour later, it's like, oh, wait, I did that or I haven't even done it yet. Completely forgot what I was doing because you get caught in the scroll. Living in the moment and, just we need social media. Like you and I, we understand, like we need it. That is one of the things that is a tool to us that can help grow us. But you have to have a fine line between business and pleasure with social media. Pleasure is the word I'm going to use, even though sometimes it's not always pleasure, because you can get caught in that endless scroll that just, gets you stuck there, that you waste so much time scrolling on Instagram. That's one of the things too, where people talk about, I wish I could be at this. And it's like, all right, what are you doing to get there? Well, I'm doing this and this. And it's like, okay, how much time do you spend on social media at night? Maybe pick up a book that's about that, or watch a video that is related to something that you want to do so that you can help grow. Like, use it as a tool and quit using it as something that you just get caught in the scroll of.
Yeah. I mean, that's the truth, man. The cell phones have captured us. I mean, that's just that, and I mean, there's obviously a lot of motivating things on Instagram, TikTok, and all that, but it's just nice, man. Like you said, go out and get some air, man. Get some air. You do something. My buddy Wes, he has a little boy, and the other day we were FaceTiming, and he was like, his little dude was riding a strider bike, and I was like, he loves to do that. He wanted to go up the driveway, come back down. He did not care about the TV, the iPad, nothing. That's all he wanted to do. And I was like, I love that, because that's the way I was when I was a kid. Like, there was no, like, we'll play video games if it rained, but even more so than that, I'm out in the mud, man. Like, let's go ride, or let's go play in the dirt, or run around the neighborhood or something. And like, I just feel like that's just, you go to restaurants now, and like, no disrespect when I see this, but I hate seeing parents and then the kids over here on this iPad by itself, and then the parents are on their phones, and it's like there's no family time whatsoever.
It's like, what was even the point of going out to dinner at this point? Like, when me and my girlfriend go out to dinner, like, we usually try to, like, in dinner in general, if we make dinner, we're sitting at the table, like, phones get put up, because like you like, yes, things come up that you need to be on your phone, laptop for work or whatever, but like most of the time we put them away, because we're like, why don't we just actually, even if we don't say a whole lot to each other, like, why don't we just actually live this moment of eating dinner together, instead of being so far up someone else's butt through Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is.
Yep. It's the way the world is these days, man. It's crazy.
It is. And this is going to lead us into the best segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I allow the guests to give the Roughnecks listeners a little inspirational bump to set the tone for their week as they listen on Monday morning. So what do you got for Motivation Monday?
Motivation Monday from Will Posey is how I'm going to say it. I would say, and we spoke about this many times through this podcast, but mine's going to be never give up. And that's the light at the end of the tunnel. And this might be a broad spectrum of what we're talking about. But I would say, hey, whatever you're going through, like, there's always going to be something at the end of the tunnel, and you will never know until you get there. Like, you have to push until you get there, until you overcome the hump, whatever it is. And like my dad, like I said, like he pushed until it was his time, and people wondered, why we did certain things. But hey, it's the way he did it, and that's the way I think it is. I think you should just never give up. I think you should always chase your dreams and go for it.
Chase your dreams, because they're not going to chase you back.
You're daggum right. There ain't no rewind button on life either. I will tell you that.
I know a lot of people that wish we were, but there is no rewind. So you might as well, you get one life, and it is was the dumbest thing at the time, but YOLO, you literally have one life, so live that life to your fullest. Don't take any type of circumstance that you have, like yourself. You took a negative and turned it into a positive. That is an inspiration. Everybody should do that. We all think we have it bad. Somebody's got it worse than us. Exactly. Continue to take all of your negatives, whatever type of negative it is, no matter how bad you think it is, and try and find a way to turn it into a positive.
Yep, that's right. Put it on a dartboard and throw darts at it too.
I'm gonna have to try that. I got my dartboard right back here. So.
Yeah, man, have fun with it. That's what a lot of people do. They just get sulked up in it. Like, have some fun with it. I mean, you're in it. You might as well make the best of it, as you just said. So,
Exactly. Man, with that's a wrap on another episode of the Roughnecks podcast. Will, thank you so much for coming on for an episode. Where can people find and follow you on social media?
So Instagram is like my main platform, at Will Posey, Posey 821 is mine. It has a little wheelchair symbol beside it, so it's pretty easy to find. And then obviously I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok as well. TikTok, same as Instagram, Will Posey 821. And I float around on there and post stuff here and there. And I'm going to try and get better about maybe posting some more about my actual real job. But yeah, I post stuff there. I don't post as much as I used to, but I definitely try to stay like motivational with my posts to, give people an outlook. And I just love posting riding content, man, so it's cool.
Yeah. If you're ever in the Ohio area, we'll definitely have to connect, or if I'm ever in the Georgia area, I'll try and connect with you, but, definitely would love to connect with you. Go follow him on social media. Like I said, we do have the college NFL Roughnecks t-shirts are out on the website. Go grab you one of those at roughneckspodcast.com. But until Friday, you guys know the deal. Life is hard and it's going to knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let that bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Roughnecks out. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you enjoyed it, one of the easiest ways to support the podcast is to just share the show. Send it to a friend and go to your favorite listening platform and leave a rating and review. It would be much appreciated. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter on roughneckspodcast.com and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Roughnecks out.